and welcome back to the Masters of Modern, the MMcast YouTube channel podcast experience. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's up, everybody? I'm back. Excited to talk about the set. Excited to talk about Magic with y'all.
We are on the streets of New Capenna. We're doing some heists, criming about, going to some swanky parties, talking to some dames, drinking that Halo, living the life of a 1920s gangster criminal.
I got a sweet trench coat. I got a nice fedora.
A pinstripe suit is the
got a real wide tie.
Big collar.
Yeah, big collar. I'm waiting to run around a corner and have my ankles tied up by like a batarang.
Yep.
There's shadows everywhere that are incredibly artistic.
One of the things I think that's funny is in this world of New Capenna is that Magic has the no gun rule, but they have finger guns.
Yeah, okay.
That's how they've gone away with it. So instead of guns, you just
finger guns. I will tell you one of the cards, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we won't talk about it because it's just a secret lair, but the art on Brea on that secret lair is so dope. Yeah, it's one of the single coolest Magic cards I've ever seen, and I'm obsessed with that card anyway. I'm 100% going to have to get my hands on that Brea. That's one of the coolest versions of a card that I love I've maybe ever seen. Is such an awesome design.
No, the design and vibe of this set is top tier. It's it's interesting. You at the beginning during the Patreon pre-show, which if you don't already subscribe to our Patreon, you're missing out on a chance to get at least 15 minutes. And today it was 20 minutes worth of bonus extra content where we talked about all things. We talked about Batman. We talked about what the best Gotham is. I had a hot take there, which the best Gotham shown in movies is. We talked about the history of Robin. You could be experiencing all of that content if you just donate to our Patreon. $5 a month. There's all this other stuff you get.
Finger guns.
You get early episode releases. You get the full edited episode on Monday, a day before it comes out everywhere else. You get a line of communication to us that's pretty obligatorily direct. All available. Yeah, we will follow you at the $10 level. I believe we follow you with like 6 different social media platforms. So there's a lot to get there. Definitely check the Patreon out. I'll link in below. Also, big shout out to Ultra Pro. Thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast and the stream that we do every Monday night. We play Commander and Modern. We're doing one Modern game a month and then 3 Commander games a month. We had awesome guests. Rebel was on along with Carson and Ben. Ben was there last Monday, and just keep having guests roll through, which is really exciting. But no more shouts outs. Let's talk. One of the things when we talked, bringing up Batman, which is the reason I segued into a whole thing about our Patreon, is how much influence this set has from the Batman animated series, right? Like specifically the vibes of that, up to and including that the one of the main posters for New Capenna is a skyward facing upward shot of the skyscrapers, then the shape of the Planeswalker symbol, which is famously done, I believe, for the Dark Knight Rises with the Batman symbol as the logo, right? Isn't that?
Yes, yeah, that's the one you're thinking of, where it's looking up through the skyscrapers,
and it has like the bat symbol spelled out with the peaks of the skyscrapers.
One of the cooler designs of any of the marketing. I thought that was one of the more awesome things. Yeah. We just moment of silence, pour one out for how good those movies are. Really, real fast. There's been a lot of comparing and this new one was so good and just the trilogy and all that, but I love Dark Knight Rises. Those movies are so good. As a trilogy, it's it's insane that the trilogy is as entertaining to watch as it is on the whole. All 3 movies are very, very, very enjoyable. You can call out the flaws that you want, but it's a pretty big success in my opinion. Huge fan.
They're really good. I have my issues with Dark Knight Rises, but
are you drinking alcohol right now? Is that a thing that's happening?
No. So I was invited to some swanky New Capenna parties by our friends at Wizards of the Coast.
I'm so Jay right now.
I got a preview card. That preview card we will talk about today on this podcast. I guess we won't because the early show. It is on our YouTube channel. It's on. You can check it out. It came out on Saturday, on the due date of my child, which we don't know if they have arrived yet. So that's going to be an interesting sharing experience. But they gave me a preview card. They gave me this awesome box. It came with this fancy new Capenna flute glass. I'm drinking some Beach Plum LaCroix, which if you haven't had it, tastes identical to a Capri Sun. I don't know how they did it. It's very weird. But they gave me some glitter. I don't know if it's edible. It says Halo on it, and it looks like it's probably edible, but I'm afraid of just drinking glitter. I guess we could put it in this glass. Let's do it. Am I allowed to eat this Halo dust, which is this cool glitter that came with it? Gonna get glitter all over my computer. All right, we're gonna pour it in my LaCroix.
Halo dust.
Let's wow. I think you are supposed to do it because it definitely changed to this really pretty blue color.
Oh wow.
As it's bubbling on top.
Look at that.
So
from where I'm sitting, which it's very pixelated, it looks very cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's making like cool bubbly sounds. All right. I think I was supposed to do this.
Audience, I'm just as jealous as you right now.
This is really dope. I'm excited that I was able to reveal that on camera. And hopefully when I drink this in a second, it doesn't kill me. I mean, according to the story, it makes you stronger. So it came in this giant, cool octagon box. I don't know if anyone bought from it has all these different compartments for each group. I chose Maestro, so all my stuff was in that one. It's upside down. I chose Maestro, so mine was in there, but there was little invitations from each of the different groups, kind of giving you a little blurb on who they are. And then I got a dope Maestro coin and a pin. So I'll be repping them with my boy Xander. Rest in peace. Throughout many a thing that's going on. All right, time to drink my blue glitter.
Very cool. Alex has been posting.
It tastes great. It don't taste like nothing. It tastes like. It tastes like a Capri Sun. That's what it tastes like.
If you guys have not been following Alex on the two social media accounts that he's most active, Twitter and TikTok, he has been interacting with the community as much as I've ever seen him do, and it's been awesome. Tons of growth, and also it's exciting that you were sent this product to reveal. We don't usually get things like that. I think it's
I know.
As much as you.
We did get to do for Calhoun. We each got those album concert boxes, which were cool.
Yeah. With the sweet shirt. I wear that shirt.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a glitter on my mouth for this entire podcast. But yeah. So thank you, Wizards, for that. That was awesome. Thank you so much for the free preview card as well. And if you want to watch a video of us breaking that down, that is actually on the YouTube channel now. It came out on Saturday, so make sure to check that out. Beyond that, just beyond the vibe, we've also got a lot of powerful cards. So we're recording this on Thursday. This was after the big stream reveal with Joe Johnson, and a lot of really cool cards came out. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is, Ben, a cycle has been completed.
Yes.
We actually get pretty regularly a request to do the complete cycle, our uncompleted cycles podcast episode, which we will do, but they're doing a really good job at completing all of these cycles.
Didn't we do one a long time ago, and it was a really popular episode?
Yeah, exactly. It's why we still get comments on the old YouTube channel that was posted to. And the cycle that the triumphs. We have the final 5 triumphs. They're the cycle of different groups' headquarters. You got Jetmir's Garden, Zayatora's Proving Ground, Xander's Lounge, Rafine's Tower, and Spar's headquarters. I am surprised how much. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised how often these see play in Modern, and then in pretty much every other format. One of probably the most powerful land cycles ever printed. Surprisingly so, right? Because
make note of this, guys. While this set is in Standard, these are going to plummet, and they'll be slightly more expensive than the last ones were when they were in Standard because of what happened with the previous triumphs. Don't get scared away. If they should be $4 and they're $7, buy your play sets now, because I promise you, in a year's time, every single one of these is going to be $15 to $20, because every new player that plays Magic and wants to play Commander just wants these cards. They're the best possible thing you can be doing in most multicolor Commander decks. And also, as you said, they're played as 1 and 2 ofs in a bunch of Modern decks. They're definitely good to have. I think they'll be a little less expensive because now that there's more options, people can play this exact combination.
You mean more options? Yeah. I see what you mean. It's the fetch land effect where fetch lands for a while, it became less expensive when cons came out, because now that there was 10 fetch land options, you no longer had to play weird off-color fetches.
Yes, exactly.
Your Jund deck didn't need to play, or I guess Jund is a bad example because you were playing through. Yeah, but your Jund deck didn't play like Arid Mesas because it could now play the Rakdos. What's the red-black fetch land?
Bloodstained Mire.
Yeah, you can play Bloodstained Mire. So like interesting effect that can happen. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited by the ability to get these lands. Cycling is always really powerful, right? It's interesting because cycling is now officially deciduous. It's now just available to put in any set, they've realized, which is cool.
It's a good design choice because it's another one of those optionality things that we've talked about where cards are good earlier, they're good late. There's nothing more satisfying in Magic than drawing cards when you have no action. So the more cards that have the ability to do something to draw you a card when you are stalled, the better. Like It's in some ways it's good that it's not this way, but there's a version of Magic that could have been designed where every single card in Magic's history had cycling on some level. Every card ever just had cycling for one of its respective color at a minimum.
Sure. Like just you never have a dead card in Magic. Yes.
There's like a version of Magic that could have existed that way that would have actually been probably fine. I don't think it would have been as good of a game, but there's a reason that it's as popular as it is now. It just moves the game along and it keeps players that don't have anything to do playing.
Yeah, I think there is a power level scale by having cards that are only good in certain moments, but are very powerful in those moments. And cycling makes it harder to cost to those cards.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. So I think that's the one reason. Yeah, one reason it would be worse, right? So speaking of cycling, let's talk about the 5e. So different from Strixhaven was one of the first times they've done a faction set where they didn't have a mechanic per faction, right? They were trying that out. Not surprisingly, that's the first time they did it, and they wanted to see what the reaction to that was. So this time around, we do have a mechanic per faction, and one of the things we're going to be talking about this episode is each of those factions. So the first mechanic we're going to be talking about is the Esper mechanic, and maybe we can the Esper mechanic, and that is connive. And connive basically is, a creature will connive, or you can connive a creature, and when that creature connives, you draw X cards, whatever that number is. So it's connive 4. You'll draw 4 cards and discard 4 cards, and then that creature gets a +1/+1 counter on it for every non-land card you discarded. So it's a little +1/+1 counters themed. It's a little, it's a looting mechanic. It's a different kind of spin on both of those sides of that thing, which is really cool. It does focus a little bit on attacking, but it is about gaining information to attack your opponent better than you would have. It does make it so you benefit from discarding non-land spells. So it does, I would imagine we're going to get some cool stuff that plays out of the graveyard a little bit with them. Already with their charm, there's a reanimate creatures 3 or less mechanic in there, which I think we've seen another card do that. So I can see that being a part of what they're doing. But yeah, what do you think? What do you think of this mechanic?
So connive states the number connive is, and that's the number of counters, the number of cards. It's you draw and discard that many cards upon attack, and for every non card.
So if it's connive 2, when this creature attacks, you draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards, and then
for every non-land one of those, the creature gets a +1/+1 counter.
Correct.
So if you were to discard 2 instants and sorceries, the creature would get 2 +1/+1 counters.
Yeah,
it happens on attack. And it's optional. It's May.
Draw a card. No, it's not. If a creature is conniving, you have to draw the cards.
Got it. I think it's an interesting mechanic. I think it's cool. It triggers on attack, so it's going to make for an interesting limited mechanic for sure. I think there will be probably situations where in limited, it's you're attacking and you draw and you discard, and before the counters are placed on the creature, now that you've discarded your non-land cards, your opponent's going to kill the creature in response, and you've discarded your action to try to get in for the kill. I can see where the combat math is going to be interesting on that one. I think it doesn't feel like an overtly powerful mechanic. It feels like a cool mechanic that I think is good because it lets you go through your deck, and it feels like a blue mechanic, obviously, because looting is pretty blue, and there's a large element of this that is looting.
Yeah, I think I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think there's very many opportunities where just looting is not always better than not looting.
Yeah.
Your deck has to be very low for it to be bad. Because the worst case scenario, I guess the only other case I can think of is you are playing a combo deck where you're trying to get exactly 2 cards into your hand and you have one of them in your hand. then looting is bad. Because if you loot and you find the other piece, you're going to have to get rid of one of them. That's like the one time in a regular deck that you're not fighting a mill or a long-term don't draw your whole deck out strategy that you'll choose not to loot. But I think that like, as long as this is being paired with graveyard shenanigans, which in standard, the Esper side does have a lot of, right? You have because of Innistrad and Crimson Vow, you get a lot of that. In modern, there's a lot of really like Esper Reanimator shenanigans you can do with this mechanic if it's costed right. If you have any of the abilities to like play with flashback cards, like Lingering Souls is in these colors, right? So like a black-white conniving 1-drop or whatever that like lets you play Lingering Souls on turn 2 is gas. So
yeah, that seems powerful.
So I definitely think like always interesting to look at. I do think so. We'll just kind of like talk about each faction, I think, holistically. So we're talking about the Obscura first. Their legendary creature, they're like leader. The leader of the Obscura is Rafine, Scheming Seer. And it's white, blue, black for a Sphinx demon, 1/4. They're all demons. It has flying and ward 1. And whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. My guess is this is maybe the only one with X as a connive, right? Like it's the only one that can do a modular version. But it's a 3-mana flyer that can get pretty big with protection, right? Like it has like you can't target this unless you pay 1 mana extra. It's pretty aggressively costed.
It's a 3-mana 1/4 flyer already that just on its first attack is going to allow you to loot and just turn it into a 2/5. Like that's just on its own.
That's its
work, if you've curved out into this card at all, like there's a world in which you're 1-drop, 2-drop, this card, attack, loot 3 times. You're attacking with a 4/6 flyer, and this card has ward and it's out of range of getting killed pretty fast.
Well, and the connive trigger, because conniving doesn't need you to attack, right? It's on any creature attacking, so you don't need Rafine to attack. You can get value off of that ability with your 1 and 2 drop, right? If you play Stoneforge Mystic and then you play this and you just attack with your Stoneforge Mystic, you get to connive with your Stoneforge Mystic. Now gets to be a 2/3 or whatever, right, on turn 2. And that's like Stoneforge Mystic, you're fetching for something, but like pick a creature 2-drop that you play that you can now gain value out of.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, I think this card's cool. For modern, it doesn't feel immediately like a card that would fit into that kind of low to the ground strategy, but I could see, I don't know if this card, well, it's a good card though. I like it. I don't know if I see it fitting into a modern deck, but I think it's a good card.
It's like, it's close, right? The one, like the CDH community already thinks this is like, mind you, it's white and blue, or it's blue and black. So like automatically this can just play Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation combo in it. So like, okay, that's good. It's an evasive beater, which is also good for that format. And it also has a draw, a draw and discard effect, which that format can take advantage of, right? Like getting rid of the like all of the mana ramp you don't need anymore to get into like spells that are relevant is like not a bad thing. And like white's pretty underrated in CDH just because of like all the really good hate creatures you can play that are like very good there. The other cool card that I want to bring up, though, is Nimble Larcenist, which is blue, white, black, 2/1 bird rogue. Flying when Nimble Larcenist enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an artifact, instant, or sorcery card from it and exile that card.
A couple things to point out about this card, Alex. First of all, the card doesn't go back to their hand when this card leaves play. It just gets exiled. That's the first thing to point out. Secondly, it's not a cast trigger, it's an ETB trigger. So now you're talking about an ETB trigger that gets rid of the card permanently that is blinkable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2-power evasive creature. Now it is triple color, and I think that in the rogue mechanic, the one thing that screams to me that this card is not good enough for competitive play is that it costs 3 and it's in 3 different colors. And if you're going to spend 3 in a rogues deck, there's a lot of good stuff you can do. But for instance, as good as like the X power rogue that has lifelink that they printed, and that card's really good. The one that's like equal to the number of cards in their graveyard, or I can't remember what it does.
It's I think creature types in their graveyard or card like types in their graveyard.
Yeah, it's a great card. I've won a lot of games with that card. As good as that card is, this is still kind of better than that card in some ways, just because it's disruptive, and we all know that when it comes to tribal decks, disruption is more important than pound for pound power.
Yeah. Well, like Sin Collector has seen modern play. Now it does have the human creature type, which this has Burden Rogue, which are weirdly which are a little less relevant. Rogue is relevant, and this ability is never going to be terrible. It does do artifacts, which Sin Collector only did instants and sorcery, so that's even an extra step above that, which is really good. I also think, like, if I were to like list out creature types that have not seen competitive Modern play but could one day, birds wouldn't be very low on that list.
Yeah,
like
true.
They are in every set. There's randomly very powerful birds. Even Mind Sensor is one that comes to mind. There are, like, the moment that we go to a set where like bird tribal is pushed in the way that like human tribal was on Innistrad is a moment that we could start seeing weirdly viable options there. In the same way that elementals, in the same way that humans and spirits and, you know, the classics like elves, goblins, merfolk, whatever have gotten it. Birds get printed regularly enough in a powerful enough ways that the moment they print a modern playable synergistic bird card, I'm
a big fan. I like birds a lot. I think there's quite a few good ones. Also, keep in mind this card plays well with Unearth. Just saying, definitely something that is cool in my mind that I would like to be doing with this card is just getting it into play, getting it back from my graveyard. It fits that 3 CMC nicely. There's a lot of that stuff in this set already.
So you mentioned Unearth, and I do want to bring up the last card that we'll talk about from the Obscura before moving on to the best group in of all the different organizations. We have Obscura Charms. So Charms are back. And this one is, I think, one of my 2 picks for the best one of the 5 charms we've seen. And its options are return target not multicolor permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Counter target an instant or sorcery spell, or destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. That first ability, it lets you get a 3 mana Teferi back. It lets you get a Kroxa back. It like lets you get a lot of really powerful things back. I think it's like, to me, it's between this one and another one that we'll talk about a little later. This one has like the more build around potential with like good use case scenarios. Yeah,
it's interesting. Esper Obscura is being designed here to be control that fights control. This card and the Larcenist both countering instants and sorceries and exiling instants and sorceries. This is very much we control the spells of the city. Mm-hmm. Which is cool. I mean, it makes sense for Esper. It's what Esper's always been. And I think this card's good. I do think one thing that's really interesting about charms, the 3-color charms specifically that I've noticed over the years, is for them to actually see play, they have to be fairly pushed in their power level. Like Archmage's Charm is a good example of a card that is pretty freaking pushed. And it took that level of push for a 3 CMC. But like Esper Charm is that card that everybody always wanted to play and like would always be card number 60. Because I think there's something about the fact that you're spending 3 mana, it's 3 different colors, you can't cost reduce it, and you don't get 2 effects. That means that one of these effects has to be costed at 3 mana, which is a little tough. I mean, this first one is especially good. Like, that top ability is unique. The fact that it's a multicolored permanent, that particular interaction with Teferi in itself is like next leveling this card.
Yeah, for me, it's the first and the last ability. Like, the last ability can kind of make it so that there's enough creatures and planeswalkers in the format that you're going to like at least get parity on level on mana value for holding this up. Like, all 3 abilities line up in a way that like maybe this is worth it. Like, it's Unearth for 3, but it's Unearth at instant speed with alternative use cases, which Unearth has cycling at 3. Yeah, I think it's close. It also, like, just as backup Unearth, like you can make a Esper list that Unearth is your main goal, right? Like, I'm playing Unearth in this deck and I want to draw Unearths, and this is my 5th Unearth. And the reason I'm able to play this is not that I need 5 Unearths, but because I need another spell, and then sometimes this can be that Unearth that I need. I think that's like where I'm at on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
The other thing I want to say about the charms, and I think it's something that like has been a little underlooked with like not adopting stuff like Esper Charm, is the elementals and the forces that are now in the format.
Yes,
right? Like, this can be pitched to force of negation, subtlety, grief, and solitude, right? Like, that's a lot of different cards that this can angle into being the card you discard for value there. And like, I think one of the issues is that the best 3 at Jeskai Charm is not very good, right? Like,
I think Broker's Charm is probably the other Broker's Charm is probably that's probably the best one, I would think, right?
No. We're going to talk about the other charms later.
No, not in a charm. I'm talking about in terms of the
color combo. Yes. Force of Negation, Solitude, and because of the forces, Broker's Charm is really good for sure.
Exactly. The forces and endurance. I mean, they're both very powerful and very played a lot. I think Broker's probably has the most utility in those decks. But yeah, I think it's a good point you make. I do think it's a good point you make.
All right, now let's go to the next group, the one that I chose to join, the Maestros, led by Lord Xander the Collector. Their mechanic.
Look at those handsome horns.
Oh, I have them ready. There'll be costumes worn. The mechanic for the Maestros is Casualty. And it's a casualty in a number. And then as you cast the spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power of that number, power 3 in the case we're looking at, or greater. And when you do, you copy that spell. So when you cast a spell with Casualty, there's a number on it. If you sacrifice a creature that has a power larger than the number that's listed or equal to or larger, you get to copy that spell. The most prominent version of using that ability in the set so far is Nixilis the Adversary. So 1 black-red legendary planeswalker, Nixilis, 3 loyalty, Casualty X, and then on top of that, the copy isn't a legendary creature and has the starting loyalty of X. So you can sacrifice any creature when you cast Ob Nixilis, and whatever its power is, that's the loyalty of the copy. And then you get 2. And then he has a +1. Each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or a devil, you gain 2 life. It has a -2. Create a 1/1 red devil creature token. Classic, when it dies, do 1 damage to any target. And then a -7. Target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. My favorite thing I've seen is playing Rotting Regisaur on turn 3, and then Ob Nixilis, the Adversary, on turn 4, and then ultimating the copy immediately and drawing 7.
That's pretty dope. I was going to say, this card is great. The blue card, a little chat, is a great example of like just the coolness of this design. It's an instant for blue 1, and it's just Casualty 1, and it's look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one in your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. You just can sacrifice a 1/1 on turn 2 and just look at the top 4 and put 2 into your hand for 2 mana. Like, there are so many ways. Think about what that. I mean, I don't think you would ever play a Calmy Garden on turn 1 to make this happen. Oh no, that's a 0/1. You'd have to have a 1/1. But I mean, there's plenty of 1/1s that are. You can just play a Young Wolf on turn 1. And literally on turn 2, end of turn, you just sacrifice your Young Wolf, make it into a 2/2, look at the top 4, put 2 of them into your hand. It's pretty good. This card, that card's good, and it's a cool ability.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think it has a lot of potential. It's probably going to be one of the ones that gets really underrated, and then like later you're like, oh wait, because like Exploit was always really close to being super playable and has been playable. And this is like Exploit, but you get the effect regardless.
Yeah, I like it.
And it's kind of like how like Flashback has always been better than Aftermath, right? Because getting the card you want twice is a more consistent, reliable option than getting 2 different cards.
Right.
Now the leader of this group is Lord Xander the Collector. My boy, 4 blue, black, red, 6/6, vampire, demon, noble. When Lord Xander the Collector enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half of their cards in their hand rounded down. When Lord Xander attacks, defending player mills half of their library rounded down. And when Lord Xander dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control, rounded down.
It's very good. You played it against me on Monday in Commander. It's a royal pain in the butt. It's a little expensive, but it's a cool card. And I also think that the design of this card with like the staff, the fur coat, the horns, like it's just like if of all the characters they're introducing here, if they made a movie out of this set, this character would be wonderful. And it would be played by Michael Fassbender, and he would or Peter Stormare. Can you imagine if Peter Stormare from Constantine played Lord Xander? He'd be incredible.
I'm going to have this out. The preview card video I posted had me wearing a cosplay as close as I could possibly duct tape together to pull this look off, because I'm excited. So I did get to play it. His ability is really interesting. It was like the internet's response to him had the largest differential between this is the meanest ban on site, this card can't be printed card ever, to like this card is trash and is bad and people shouldn't play it. I think in 1v1 it's really interesting because as a reanimation target, it has the vampire subtype, and it allows Sorin, the 3-mana one from M21, M20,
put it directly into play.
Put him into play on turn 3. So he is like so if you're building a weird vampire reanimator deck or just a vampire tribal deck that plays that Sorin, this could be your weird top end card.
I mean, this is the best card I can think of for that deck. When I built that Sorin, I built a Sorin deck in Modern at one point that I was trying to make happen. And I put remember the Chancellor, the black one, Chancellor of the Dross?
Yes.
Which I think it's a drain game.
Drain 3 if you have an open hand. Yeah.
And I played that in the Sorin deck because like it seemed like a perfectly reasonable card to like get a cheap pop-up of and then just put directly into play.
Yep. He's like being able to discard like the thing you have to remember is like discarding someone's hand by half rounded down means at best most of the time you're getting 2 cards. If you're lucky, you're getting 3 cards, or they're a greedy deck, right? Or they're doing something specific that lets them maximize their hand size in some way, and then they deserve whatever is coming to them. Most like, and if it's less than 2, if it's, if they have 1 card left, nothing happens. Milling their card deck in half is cool. Like cards that like you didn't even see that are in the deck is the Guild Mage, the Dimir one, the one that whenever a player mills a card, they lose a life.
Oh yeah. The Duskmantle Guild Mage.
Duskmantle Guild Mage is in there, right? And like being able to like Duskmantle Guild Mage into Lord Xander is like 30 damage on attack. That's like some of the cool stuff you can do. Like milling by half doesn't kill them, right? That's the one problem is it will never kill someone, but you can use that with other cards to do some sweet stuff. Which is another like a vampire rogues deck that's playing Sorin and this like combined, taking advantage of both halves. And then the last ability, just like if it dies, you make them sack all the permanents. In Commander, this card is dope. I got to play it. It's like super political because you can use all of its abilities that are targeted in like a don't mess with me, otherwise I will target you with these things when I eventually pass this. Like it's more, it's a way cooler ability from the theme of the character, right? Like he's like, I'm a wheeler dealer. I own the nightclub. You come to me and I'll hook you up with the right people. And it's like, and it plays that way. I thought it was pretty cool. And like, there's like dumb things you can do with it. But is it modern playable? I think like the only viable one is like, the Sorin plan. Like I think he's the best Sorin reanimation target ever created, or sneak attack target created so far, and that makes it interesting. What he does is a mini cruel ultimatum, which is also fine.
I mean, through the breach you sacrifice at the end of turn.
Through the breach you do sacrifice at the end of turn.
I mean,
so that's cool as well because you get both halves. Or Goryo's Vengeance, where you also, or not Goryo's Vengeance, Walk of the Goryo, right? Or like
Footsteps of the Goryo.
Footsteps of the Goryo. I think you sacrifice at end. Like that's the hall. What's the green card that
Protean Hulk?
Protean Hulk. The Protean Hulk Footsteps deck. Like that's another one, right? You get to sack it, and then you got to make them sack permanents. But once again, it's only half, so it's like weird. As much as I love this guy from a character vibe perspective, and in Commander as a commander, I think he's a lot cooler than people are giving him credit for, and not nearly as mean as people are giving him credit for. I just don't like. Maybe in Pioneer, because of the Sorin interaction, I just don't know about Modern. Maestro's Charm, blue, black, red. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Maestro's Charm deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Pretty medium on this charm as one of the charms. It like, especially its second ability, just like a drain, has always been really disappointing. Unless it's for free when you're milling yourself accidentally.
I mean, that second ability is like the final like burn closer, but like you don't really want 3 mana to do that. And then, I mean, it's removal. It's card selection, top 5 cards of your life, put 1 cards into your hand, and the rest of your... I feel like it's the second ability that really knocks this down.
I think it's a good standard. I mean, and the other 2 abilities aren't enough, right? Like none of these are like worth 3 mana by itself. And as you said, like 3 mana is the deal. And you do get to play Fury and Force Negation off of it. And it's like more fitted to a control type strategy, which those are better in, but like there's just better options. I would rather play a lot of cards over this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's
like I can build a deck around Obscura Charm to make it work. I like can't think of a deck that I would play Maestro's Charm over 1,000 cards that I would play.
Yeah, Maestro's Charm doesn't have any unique utility that breaks the card open. Whereas like Obscura Charm, there's like some pretty powerful stuff that can get done with it that makes it like more than a normal 3 mana charm. There's lots of 3 mana options that have existed.
Right. The next and that as far as Maestro specifically goes, that we are done. This is the group as far as vibes go. I'm here. The fact that there is a second major Grixis character with a section of my name attached to it. I have Dander and Kess. I'm here. I was born to play this role. The next group is the Riveteers. I said it with both E's. Callahan, I'm calling you out specifically.
Riveteers.
Someone got mad at me because I'd said Riveters instead of Riveteers. And you know what? I'm not going to say Luris correctly ever again either.
I'm all about the Riveters, man. I want them. They're like iron workers. They hammer the rivets.
It's their comrades. They're the union guys. They're out here boxing, fighting, getting stuff done. They're ran by Zeatora, the incinerator. They're a mechanic, their ability. They also have some mechanics working for them, but in the term, the way that, in Magic the Gathering terms, mechanic is Blitz. Blitz is for a cost. You may cast this spell for its Blitz cost. It gains haste and gains, when this creature dies, draw a card. You sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So it's dash. So, the Ragavan now made famous mechanic, dash, but instead of it returning to your hand at end of turn, you sacrifice it and draw a card.
Look, Zeatora is a demon dragon, so it does have kind of those Jund, Rakdos sacrifice, I'm going to eat my young kind of vibes to it, which I think is cool. And that's part of the dash thing you're talking about. That my question to you is this: if you had to guess right now, off memory, not including the set, prior to this, how many demon dragons are there in Magic's history?
All right, let me think. So I do have, I have a deck built around one.
While Alex is thinking, guys, we do this every single week. Normally, Alex is asking me the question, but in this particular case, I literally was thinking about this on air, and I decided to ask him. So if you know the answer, comment below. If you don't know the answer, you have to like the video, and maybe even hit subscribe too if you haven't already done that. But if you do know the answer, put it below. And Alex, what do you got?
One. Malfegor.
That's the only one. You are dead right. He is the winner, folks, and that was our trivia segment of the show.
You know the rules. If you got the trivia question correctly, you don't have to hit that like button. We appreciate it if you do, but if you didn't, please hit that like button. So Malfegor, I've had that commander deck for a long time, and I've known I'm a big Malfegor fan. Interesting enough, Michael also had a Malfegor deck because the promo came out on his birthday. It has the pre-release card promo date on it, and it's his birthday. Though that one's not as pretty. He's like a weird centaur when you look at it that way.
A demon dragon, very, very, very particular, very specific.
So Zeatora is back. He and he is a 6/6 flyer for 6 mana, 3 black, red, green. A very important casting cost for a dragon. Legendary creature. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Zeatora the Incinerator does damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. Now, from a commander perspective, unless someone shows me there's some weird combo where you win the game because sacrificing the right thing, they print a 12-drop drag. I don't think this is a modern playable card. Maybe in standard, as some weird Jund finisher. It has a lot of really good abilities, and it immediately gains you value. Worse dragons have seen play in standard, and I am not here to tell you I understand any at all of what's going on in standard. I will say I kind of I think this is my biggest flavor miss for me. I kind of wish that the Jund tribe being the labor union, workers unite kind of group was less sacrifice for value.
Sure, it feels it doesn't feel that unique or different than a lot of what we've seen out of this lately. It feels like they're playing into the same space that we've seen a lot of.
If this was a card in Jund, the original Alara Jund, I wouldn't blink. Right, the other groups as we get to them do feel different in different ways. The Grixis and Esper doesn't feel like Esper, right? It's not artifact themed. It feels a little Azorius, and it's if Azorius and Dimir had a child, which is fine, but that's kind of its vibe, which is very different than what Alara was. Maestro and Grixis Maestro is not very much about graveyards. It's much more about spells and conniving and planning correctly and politic versus Grixis, which was like, I am unearthing demons, graveyard shenanigans, haha. And we'll get into, and like the Naya strategy is about going wide, and the Bant strategy here, or the Cabaretti tribe is very much about, you know, going wide with creatures and having as many creatures in play as possible. And the brokers are very much about like different types of counters on creatures, and like those mechanics feel totally different from Bant and Naya. Right, Naya was about like big 5 power creatures, and Bant was about attacking with one single creature that was the one that was leading the charge in your go wide strategy. So
I do think there's something interesting with Zeotora just for Modern. Not that I think this would be a deck necessarily, but you sacrifice equal that creature's power and you create 3 treasure tokens, which means, well, I guess you'd have to have Zeotora already in play. Because there is a version of this where I can imagine that, yeah, you could do stuff like Phyrexian Soulgorger and like big creatures like that that are, you know, cheap and have high power. And that's kind of like a fling deck. There's also a version of this deck where like you are playing medium-sized creatures that are valuable, but you have lots of pump spells. So I can imagine like, you know, scale up and cards that you would play traditionally in like an infect style deck, you know, or like the Phyto Burst, the +5/+5 for 2. There's a bunch of like 1 and 2 that give +4/+4 and +5/+5 that like if you were to string a couple of them together on a good creature, you could be dealing like 14 pretty easily.
You're right. So if there was a strategy that involved specifically you wanting to have access to Court of Calling, like, and you were pumping one creature old style Death Shadow style, right? Yeah. Like you were going like deep on making a Death Shadow into a 10/10 double striker, or you're just like pumping one creature to make it big enough to get damage in. I think this could see play as a Court of Calling target to fling, right? This is a fling also, on a creature.
You also mentioned Death Shadow. I mean, there's also a version of a deck where Death Shadow's in the deck and you pay your life total down to 1 or 2 and you just like sack Death Shadow end of turn, and now you've dealt like 13, you've dealt 12.
Yeah, you have to get the damage. Yeah, but like that's fair. Like as a tutorable fling. I don't know, like please comment below if there is a creature in Modern already that has an ETB or end of turn, the turn you have it in play, fling effect. That's like that happens the turn you get it. If that exists already, then never mind. But if it doesn't exist, that is a space where this could see play in Modern.
I think your point about Cord is really smart. And I think also the fling effect here being end of turn and not costing any mana is powerful. That's what makes it good. Also, like the fact that you sack a creature and you get 3 treasures. So if you like Court of Calling this into play, then you're left with extra mana to do more stuff.
Yeah, I think like if you were Court of Calling for a 6 mana spell, which means you had to pay 9 mana or tap a lot of creatures to do that, you need to win.
Yep.
And so, mind you, if you've done 13 damage to something, getting this into play is going to do that. So I think as a top end of that type of deck, it actually is maybe fine, as long as it also is built to want to cheat this into play somehow. Be it there are, you know, a lot of ways to do that. That is not an uncommon way of winning in Modern. You can reanimate this with Goryo's Vengeance, you can fling, you can Court of Calling it, you can through the breach it. Like there are ways to get this into play that do coincide with decks that want to make one big creature, but you just have to do both of those things.
It seems fun. It doesn't seem good, I guess, is basically what that in my mind.
It fits a very specific niche. I can imagine a deck existing that needs that very specific niche. Is that common? No. Does the deck currently exist? Probably not. But if in like the next 10 years, eventually there's a moment where like, oh yeah, my like, what's the exile your graveyard, pump a thing 6?
Become Immense.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, my Become Immense Death Shadow deck, like that's playing Court of Calling for like all of my hate bears that like let my guy get through, does want a fling effect. This is your guy. He's going to be on the side of the ring being like, put me in, coach. I got this. But yeah, beyond that, I think like one of the cards, Jaxus the Troublemaker, which is the Blitz card they previewed, was a 4 mana 2/3 human warrior. Red, tap, discard a card to create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and whenever this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. So it basically creates a Blitz clone of something, but you can Blitz Jaxis, and so for 3 mana, you can discard a card to create a copy of another target creature you control. Like, I think there's like really cool stuff you can do with this card. I think as like a mechanic, there's going to be some really like spicy, trickstery stuff that's available.
Interesting. Yeah, that card's cool. Cool art too.
Yeah, it's it has like a Kiki Jiki vibe to it, but like slightly different, you know. And then the last part though is what I have as my pick for the best charm of the 5 charms that we've gotten so far, and that's Riveteers charm.
The Riveteers charm.
The Riveteers charm. Black, red, green, instant. Choose one. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Exile the top 3 cards of your library until your next end step. You may play those cards. Exile target player's graveyard. So exile target player's graveyard is a very obviously powerful mechanic that like you want it on other things. Otherwise, there's 1 mana or 0 mana versions of this spell you could be playing. But when it's attached to something else that's valuable, adds an extra layer. The sacrifice trigger is the best version of like a edict effect you can have, really, which is the card that your opponent has invested the most resources into is the one you're getting rid of. Is it their 5 drop? Is it their 4 mana planeswalker? Is it their Primeval Titan? You know, whatever they've like worked hard to get to high, you get. It's not always their best card because sometimes Ragavan exists, but often it's going to be one of the more valuable
Regent cards or something like that,
and something that you've spent parity on, right? I've spent 3 mana. You spent 3 mana. Like on like whatever I'm spending my 3 mana on, it's going to be worth more than like a random token.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Riveteers charm, and this is it's a hack. I think anybody who's played a lot of Magic the last 2 or 3 years, I think knows this, but like, so the red exile top of my library until my next turn I can play those cards ability is supposed to be, it's supposed to be 80%. I'd estimate 75 to 80% as expensive as the blue version of just draw those many cards. But obviously there is the downside or the drawback of if I can't effectively use those cards in the time, I don't get to keep them. So that's why it can cost a little bit less. But the hack is, anyone who's done this knows, when you draw 3 cards off blue for 3 mana, often one of those cards is like, or 2 of them are lands, and like you don't care, you don't want that anyway. Like it's, you often like end up with 1 card that's kind of worthless anyway. So the ability to do this on aggressively costed cards and essentially use those 3 cards effectively, like, or use the 2 of those 3 cards that actually matters to you, makes it just as valuable as blue. I mean, maybe it's 10% worse, maybe, but it's not anywhere near as risky, I think, as it seems to people. And I think that the fact that you
can cast it on the end of your opponent's turn, the fact that it's on an instant speed spell means that, like, because normally these effects are either costed in a way that, like, by the end of your next turn is costed high, or it's this turn, right? And until the end of this turn, do this. But the fact that this is the end of your next end step and this is on an instant means that you can cast this at the end of your opponent's turn. And for 3 mana, draw 3. Like, that's what this card basically creates. It's like draw 2.75 because
exactly.
If you happen to get 2 lands, you're off of it. But then that also means you didn't draw there is a little bit of a scry addition to that where it's like, oh, I don't need to be drawing 3 lands over my next few turns. So you get rid of one.
That's kind of my point, right? Like if you think about what this card means in an actual game of Magic against deck X, against the field, what it means is when they enter their attack step or during their upkeep, if you know they have a planeswalker, they're going to do something big, you get to react to probably the most devastating part of their turn. Either you can make them sack the planeswalker, you can make them sack the biggest creature that's a threat, probably during combat. You can react to any kind of graveyard shenanigans that they're doing, which is often going to be some kind of good play in their deck, if it's a targeted thing or whatever. Or if none of that happens and they have a nothing turn and you just want to turn the card over, you just play end of turn, draw 3, and now all your mana is available to you. You have 3 more options on your turn. Sounds like a pretty good deal for me on a freaking charm. None of those abilities are supposed to cost. None of those abilities feel. The only one that feels like it shouldn't cost 3 is Exile Target Player's Graveyard, and it's because it's on a charm. But like the other 2 abilities,
that ability is always adjacent to other things. Right, like almost always, like Graveyard Hate, or the Graveyard Hate that sees play is either free, or is an add-on. It's this much mana plus draw a card plus exile someone's graveyard, or it's you can pay a little bit more to draw a card in it, or or it's free, or it's like here it's like this is your third option.
Yeah, agreed. I think this is probably the best one. I would agree with you.
I think like right now I have to make a new deck that makes Obscura want to see play to see Obscura to play. I could just put Riveteers and Jund.
Riveteers
and Jund. Riveteers, Charm, and Jund just one as a one of. And like,
yeah.
And like, this is the perfect type of card also that you just like sideboard out after game one. Like, it's like, it's in here because it's going to always be pretty good. And then once I know my opponent is playing XYZ, I can pick the correct sideboard card for against them.
Or
but this
is they're a heavy graveyard deck and you want all your graveyard spells in your deck. And you leave it in there.
You get a free graveyard hate in game one out of it. You get to like eat big planeswalkers out of a Tron or whatever, which like often you don't get to do in Jund. Like those are like your worst cards to face as a Jund opponent. So like, I really like this card as a one of for sure. The next card we're going to talk about before we jump right into the Jetmir group is we're going to talk about Elsbeth Resplendent. 3 white legendary planeswalker Elsbeth, 5 loyalty. Choose up to 1 target creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and a counter from among flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilance. Minus 3, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Or -7, create 5 3/3 white angel creature tokens with flying.
I'll jump in here and say, I have a beef with this design, not the card, something that goes back to Ikoria. And I think it was a mistake. And I just don't think we're so deep now that it's just what we do. But like arbitrary tokens to represent abilities on creatures is a phenomenal idea. It's very cool. And I like how it interacts with removing a counter from a creature, or like creature that is modified with a counter. Problem is when I'm playing Magic with friends, I am never going to have the official counters that represent which ability. Sometimes I might have a piece of paper and a pen that I can do on the spot, but often I'm not going to have any of that. I'm often going to have my deck. I'm going to have a bag of dice, and we're going to play. And if there's more than one of these in any situation, it's going to be impossible for me to remember unless I'm paying such close attention. Like if I'm at a table of EDH players and we're all playing a game of Commander, and down at that end, you've got 3 counters on your creatures and they're not represented well, or they're scribbled. It's like, I have no idea what's going on down there, and I can't keep track of it. And it's so much optionality that is very cool for the actual abilities. But I think I think it was a mistake from a keeping track of what's going on the board perspective, in my opinion. What do you think?
I love the mechanic. I like absolutely love ability counters. I don't disagree with you that I wish there was maybe easier ways to keep track of it that existed. Sure.
Yeah.
But I heavily disagree on like the mistake statement. I absolutely love ability counters. I think they should be in every set. I think it's a dope idea.
That wasn't my point, right? My point wasn't that because I said at the beginning, I think they're very cool.
And that's why I didn't. I was going to say I heavily disagree with you, and then I pulled back and I said I don't disagree that there could be better ways to keep track of it. I have some solutions for you. One of them is making on your phone, on your notes app, a list of 1 equals flying, 2 equals this, and then using dice if you have 6-sided dice to be able to keep track of which number. Another one's just writing down Elsbeth has flying, first strike, whatever. There are ways to keep track of it.
I totally agree with you. If you're prepared and you have it in your deck box and you're ready, that's one thing. But
that was like a phone, using your phone, not even using like counters or anything.
I mean, you expect me, if I'm playing at a table of people, even one-on-one, to like refer to your phone diagram to look at like what your dice number means on a creature?
I just don't think it's that hard to remember on a 1v1 game. In a Commander, maybe, but like, I don't know. Yeah. Like,
feels needlessly complicated is my point. I don't think there is an elegant way for the casual player to keep track of it, I guess is my point. I think the counters are very cool, but I don't think keeping track of it's easy. And for that reason, I think it's overcomplicated. So
but it's here to stay. So with it here to stay, it's dope as I can't say all of those words because this is a family-friendly podcast. I love it to death. I want more cool ability counters. I want to put lifelink counters on things. I want to put death touch counters on things. I think it's a really, really fun mechanic. It's one of my favorite things from Ikoria. I love Ikoria a lot. So yeah, I disagree with you. I think it is totally worth the complication to have this ability in Magic. And I do wish that there were more tools given to help solve your problems, because I don't disagree that problem exists, but I think from a gameplay perspective, they are super, super tight. Beyond that, with this It's 5 mana Planeswalker, so from a modern perspective, not gonna see a lot of play. The second ability also just feels like it's gonna miss. We'll get into shield counters next because I think we'll jump over to Bant, the Bant tribe, because I realized she's in the Bant section with that ability. The ultimate's cool. It gets there really quick, making 5 3/3 white angel tokens is a lot of angel tokens.
15 power. Yeah, she does get there quick, right? Takes you 3 turns to create 15 power.
Yeah, she doesn't really protect herself, though. If she gives a creature you already have +1/+1 in flying or +1/+1 in first strike, she'll definitely help protect herself. From a card perspective, she's cool. I really like the mechanic, but that does bring us to the brokers ran by Falco, and their mechanic is that shield counter. So that is a new thing that Elspeth does put on someone, and that is an ability counter goes on a creature, and if that creature would to be destroyed or take damage, you remove that counter instead. So you block any amount of damage. So if you ping it, it'll block the ping damage, and then it'll lose its shield. So you can get rid of that shield through non-lethal damage, or any destroy effect, destroy all creatures, destroy target creature, whatever. It survives that the first time.
It's actually very interesting to me because I said this to you earlier when we were at lunch today. This feels like an ability that I'm surprised hasn't existed until now, because unlike the other counters I was talking about a second ago, where they have classically been represented by words on cards, and so it's a new thing to represent them with counters. This is like something they would have come up with at some point, just like a shield counter. You have this counter on it until you don't. And it's existed there's been cards that have created something similar to this. There have been you play this card and it puts a counter on this creature, and as long as this creature's in play, this counter makes it indestructible. There's been riffs on this, but it's such a simple mechanic that from a new player perspective is really easy to understand. This has a shield on it. As long as this is on it, it has a shield. Now it's not on it, it's gone.
So it kind of did. That's what Regenerate was, but it wasn't until end of turn. Right. This creature gained not an effect, but it was a token, but it didn't interact with the rules that way. That if this were to die, it instead is tapped and doesn't die, and you remove all damage from it. And it was just this is really what it should have been. You get a regen, it just because it was a mechanic that was invented in alpha. It was never really worded correctly, and they finally got rid of it, and they've now come up with the better version. I do think it's funny because this mechanic exactly is in the first game we made as a company. So if you ever play Super Party Battle, which you can buy on Amazon, it's a fun party game version of Magic. One of the key mechanics, one of the key keywords is a shield token that characters get, and it takes 2 attacks to kill them. It's a mechanic where there's no power and toughness. If you get in a fight, you die if you are attacked, and the win always goes to the attacker. And we had shield tokens as a way for characters to be harder to get rid of. So it's cool to see it back in Magic. And Elspeth gets to put it as its minus onto the creature or the permanent she finds in the top 7 cards. And Falco, who's the commander, gets to play with those counters. So 1 green, white, blue, bird, demon, 3/3. Flying Trample, Falco Spara Pack Weaver enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying its other costs. So basically, when it enters play, they have a shield counter. They then can do the look at the top card of your library. You can cast cards from it, but you have to remove a counter. It can include that shield counter. So it comes with 1 free counter to remove for the card you want to cast from the top of your library. But if you find any number of different cool cards that have counters on them, both negative and positive, it can remove them. So it can remove cumulative upkeep counters from creatures. It only can do it from creatures. It can remove -1/-1 creatures. So persist creatures, if you have a Kitchen Finks and it dies and it's in play, you can remove the -1/- counter to continue it. That also works with +1/+1 counters from undying creatures, right? So it gets the play in this really cool space already. This is probably the second of these that I'm going to build in Commander.
But also doesn't state, there is a version of this card that would have stated, you may do this once each turn. That's a totally fair version of this card that would be fun and powerful enough, and the power toughness, probably if that version of this card was the one that was here, it would cost 3 instead of 3/1 is my guess, because it would be fine as a 3/3 flying trample for 3. But because it doesn't, it costs 4, which puts it in line with like a Kaikar. It's in that range of a flyer that's got a pretty engine-y ability on an evasive creature. And yeah, I mean, this card's like you just described a pretty powerful, pretty doable type of engine that could be played in a format like Modern. Like there's like this card is this card could be in a combo deck. Like this card will probably be in a combo deck of some kind. It has vibes of.
So it's banned, but if you have Devoted Druid and top, you get infinite enter the battlefield effects with artifacts.
Interesting.
Because you can tap it for green, put a -1/-1 counter, untap it, remove the -1/-1. Use that green to play top from the top of your library, remove the -1/-1 counter, draw a card, put top back on top. You can draw your whole deck infinitely.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's like some sort of a sacrifice engine.
Well, no, you draw your whole deck. You don't just get infinite cast triggers. You draw your whole deck. Sorry, I said that wrong when I started. You have top in play. You tap it to draw a card. You put the card in your hand. You put top on top of your library. Then you look at the top of your library. Oh, there's a top there. You tap Devoted Druid to play top. Removing the -1/-1 counter used to untap Devoted Druid.
Well, so Devoted Druid and this card, just those two cards together have a lot of applications.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of insane things you can do. Top is the one that lets you draw your whole library, but any Devoted Druid is just really good with Falco.
Yeah, right. That's like there's a lot, and Devoted Druid is already half of a infinite combo that exists in Modern classically anyway.
Yep.
Which people don't play as much anymore. But now that this card exists, this is like it's pretty sweet. This of the 4 of these for Modern, I think this is. Of the 4 we've talked about so far, this is the most powerful. This one has. I think
it also It does some fun stuff with Luminous Broodmoth. One cool thing that this card does is it lets you just have Glenelendra Archmage on available to counter non-creature spells forever.
Okay.
Right, because you can remove all persist creatures get weird, right? Like Glenelendra Archmage lets you just counter target instant and sorcery available, and then the moment you use it, you get to then cast a spell from the top of your library to remove the -1/-1 counter, so creating like a soft lock. It's Grazing Kelpie. It's a 3 green-blue hybrid 2/3. You can sacrifice Grazing Kelpie for a blue and a green to put target card in a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library, and it has Persist. And if you have Ornithopter as the only card, if you have no cards in your library and Ornithopter in your deck, you can cast it infinitely. What do you want to do with that? I don't know, but you can never die. Like you'll be drawing Ornithopter forever.
You just have to have a Reckless Fireweaver in play.
Yes, exactly.
And you just win the game.
Just on like
the old 4-card combo, the strongest.
Well, no. It's a 2-card combo because it's a 3-card combo because you need a way to empty your library. So Demonic Consultation, Grazing Kelpie, and Falco Spara. No, wait. This is Legacy, I guess. you have Grazing Kelpie, Sensei's Divining Top, Devoted Druid, Falco Spara, and an Ornithopter in your deck. And then all you need is the top and Devoted Druid and Falco to go up. This is a dope commander deck that is not it's maybe not a Legacy thing and definitely not a Modern thing, but he's really cool.
Yeah, I think this card's really sweet. So let's talk about the Bant Charm, it's not Bant Charm. It's called Broker's Charm.
Yeah, it's the one I think missed the mark just barely. Like
yeah, I think I would agree with you. Makes me sad because yet again, Bant has managed to not be good. It's kind of astonishing how many years and how many times they've designed cards in Bant that are cool that just don't actually matter or aren't good. Like, do you remember how stoked we all were for Tamiyo, for Bant Tamiyo, for how good that card seemed and how little of an impact it actually ended up having? It's so difficult for Bant to seemingly break through. I've never really understood why. They're very good colors. It's just you just end up with Noble Hierarch.
Noble Hierarch
getting played in non-Bant decks, though. It just ends up getting played in other decks. But yeah, so Broker's Charm, instant for Bant colors. Choose 1 target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. If it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. Destroy target enchantment. Draw 2 cards. So first of all, it has draw 2 cards. Whereas we already mentioned Riveteers Charm. This is exactly what I was just talking about. It's the difference between draw 2 and exile 3. It's just not as good. It's just you just are getting less. You're just getting less pop. Destroy target enchantment is way, 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 way more specific than exile target graveyard. It's still good, obviously, but it's just going to be relevant a lot less of the time. And the +1/+0 until end of turn it deals damage equal to its power to target or creature or planeswalker opponent controls is like, yeah, let me just let you 2-for-1 me while I like try to +1/+0 my creature. Like, it's like a fight effect. None of the effects on this card are actually worth.
Well, I'll disagree with you. Like an instant speed draw 2, like Esper Charm has seen modern play. Not a ton, not an infinite amount, but people have played Esper Charm to some success throughout the history of this format, and not just like in the back era. Like recently, Esper Charm has been like looked at as like, oh, I'm playing a 3-color deck. I want to be able to do what we talked about, Force Negation and Solitude, really easily off of a card. Wizard's Charm is like, or Archmage Charm is too hard for me to cast because triple blue is just like not what this deck. It's like splashing blue. It's actually a white-black deck with some blue cards. Esper Charm has seen play, and this card is 2 of the exact same abilities, right? Destroy target enchantment, draw 2 cards. Those are the exact same 2, to the extent that like it's kind of annoying how similar it is. And then the difference, though, is target player discard 2 cards at instant speed is a more relevant, powerful ability than Bite, than a +1/+0.
I just think the first 2 abilities on this card are like not abilities that I want to spend 3 mana for. And I don't think drawing 2 as the third ability balances it out or makes it worth it. I don't think it's an actively horrible card. I just think it's, there's always a weakest, and I think this is the weakest.
Yeah, I'm more just commenting how like that discard effect on Esper Charm makes the difference between these 2 cards.
Yes, that's fair.
And partially because like people maybe not listening to this, but like discarding your opponent's hand at instant speed. Like there's a reason they don't print very much instant speed discard, and it's because you can use it to lock people out of their draw step. Yes. Right. And Broker's Charm doesn't do that. But it's so close. Is there anything else specific you want to talk about here? Go to the last. I
do think it's the one thing I'll just throw out there just because I like this card. Disciplined Duelist, I don't think is a card that's going to see modern play, but it's just a card I always like when they design cards like this. As a new player, it always is the kind of uncommon that I feel like is exciting to get in a draft pack, and it's the kind of exciting card that feels distinctive. It's Disciplined Duelist. It's blue, white, green. It's a 2/1 human citizen with double strike, and it has a shield counter when it enters the battlefield. So it's a 2/1 double strike for 3 that has protection, which just makes it a pound for pound kind of sweet card. Like I think this card's going to be fun to play in limited, and I think it's the kind of card that there's Balagat Beastbreaker. There's powerful uncommons that always, when I can remember getting into a new set, have stood out in my memory. It's because I enjoy playing them in like limited environments. They always feel like I've gotten one of the good uncommons. Mm-hmm. This card feels like that card to me. So I saw it on the list and I just wanted to shout it out.
Yeah, no, there's a whole cycle. So like whenever we go to these sets, there's always this cool cycle at uncommon, and that's what Nimble Larcenist, the 3-mana bird that exiled. There's a Grixis one that was previewed in China, I believe, but it's called Corpse Examiner, Vampire Rogue. This is from Maestro. When Corpse Examiner enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard. If you put a card into exile this way, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. It's a 3/3. It's a similar kind of power level, and this one's cool. Yeah, I agree. Double strike, etc. We haven't gotten the other 2 groups yet. And I will disagree with you on your statement that Bant always gets the short end of the stick. I'm not saying it hasn't. I mean, Bant Spirits was a playable modern deck, right? When I did a whole like breakdown on Twitter on like what's the best modern deck historically for every 3-color combo, and which ones never have really had one. And Bant is one that had one. It's just Bant Spirits, right? I feel like specific tribal.
Funnily, like Bant, and now we're about to talk about Naya. They if you compare them to Grixis and Jund and like to some degree Esper. I mean, I think Esper's of those 3, but yeah, I mean Esper as well. They don't even compare. Like it's just funny to me.
I think that. Well, I mean Naya has Burn. Like Naya Burn, the 3-color Burn has been the main Burn deck in Modern for 8 years, right? Like,
yeah, but that's not really a Naya deck.
Why not?
I mean, like it's a Boros deck, really. It plays Ancient Grudge. What's the green card?
No, it plays the Tarkus command.
I guess it did. It doesn't really much anymore.
Goes back and forth on it. Yeah. It plays the what's the red green enchantment that like you can sacrifice to do stuff with too that does damage.
I think I know the one you're talking about. It doesn't matter. But anyway, my point is that
I'm arguing
those two color combos are a little less powerful, I guess. It always feels like I want them to push through, and they're never quite as good. But let's talk Cabaretti.
So Cabaretti is the red, white, green group. It's the last one we're going to talk about today. We'll have two cool character cards to talk about as well here, but its main mechanic is Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, do a thing. So at the beginning of this podcast, we were talking, does that ability exist? And I realized it does exist. It exists in this set. So we finally have Creature Fall for the first time.
Okay.
So now whenever a creature enters play, do a thing. It's like Landfall. It's like Constellation. It's that type of world. It's funny that we've never really had a creature version of it. One thing I will say is it is very possible there are many infinite combos that just will exist here. For instance, Devilish Valet, 2 and a red, trample haste 1/3. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double its power. Like you could make a infinitely large Devilish Valet very easily.
Quite easily, yeah.
It's very easy to put infinite creatures into play, like infinite ETBs, right? Like if you have like Ornithopter and I think one other one, like I think you can do it pretty easily. So yeah, so that's the entire mechanic is going to be able to take advantage of that abilities. The leader is Jetmir, Nexus of Revels, 1 red, green, white for a 5/4 cat demon, which is also on my list of tribes that have a very high chance of being modern playable cats. And this guy will help. Creatures you control get +1 and +0 and have vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control also get +1, +0 and have trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. And creatures you control also get +1, +0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. So if you have 8 creatures in play and Jetmir, your creatures get +0, +3, +0, vigilance, trample, and double strike.
Seems pretty good.
It's a lot. It's a 4 mana legendary creature version of Craterhoof Behemoth. If you have 9 creatures in play,
yeah.
It's in, as you mentioned, for modern purposes, awkward colors. But there are decks in modern that can get that many creatures into play, but it becomes more of a board stall moment. And if you're able to take advantage of this, that's a lot of damage. Now he dies to not every removal. He is a 4 toughness creature, but he does do a lot of removal under the sun. But that is a lot of power. I think in Commander he's like overtly the most powerful.
Do elves play? Elves I know have played Collected Company in the past. The ones that play green black. Do they ever play Chord though? They do, right?
Yeah,
sometimes
they for sure do.
Yeah. So I mean, if you were to throw this card into an elves deck, but then again, they would just actually Chord for Craterhoof. So
yeah. Like if you're creator, like. Well, I don't know. I think, if you're not playing this to cast it, I think if you're playing a Naya deck that goes wide for whatever reason, this card is a thing to look at. I think, honestly, if someone figured out a cat's deck, a cat tribal deck, if there are other cards printed, this card is playable in that deck because it is a
3 mana 2/1, the uncommon from Horizons 1, the Lord. Like they all get +2/+1, I think.
Yeah. Like there are cats will eventually get enough cards where there's like a conversation where they're as viable as Merfolk. Like you also get like Wild Nicottle, right? Like in these colors is great. So like it's in the right colors for that. I think there is play there. I don't think they're there now or yet, depending on what we see in this set, but I think it's pretty close. And I'm excited.
I think the other thing too about this card is like, we're all thinking about getting 9 creatures. If you have this, a Wild Nicottle and the Cat Lord we just talked about, and you just curve them out into this card, well, now you've got like a 5/4, like a +2/+1. So it's like you probably have a 6/4 Nicottle, like a 3/2 Lord and a 5/4, and like and they all have vigilance. Like you don't need. I mean, it'd be nice to have double strike and trample and all that stuff, but just the +1/+0 and vigilance as a pump on a 4 mana 5/4 is already pretty strong.
Yep. And like getting to the 6 creatures is not that hard on the upswing, right? Like if you curve out 1 mana creature, 2 mana creature, 3 mana, 1 or 2 creatures, depending, like when you play this at that point, you're now at 5 creatures, you untap and you have 6 without really blinking. And then giving them +2/+0 and trample is kind of, you win if you get to attack. Like modern does not have a life total that can handle 12 trample power coming at you, regardless of what the creature type is, right? Like that's the other thing is like 6 times 2 is 12. How many decks can handle 12 trample damage coming at them, plus whatever creature, like at a minimum, 5, 6, 7, and if everyone else is a 1/1. So yeah, so at a minimum, if everything is a 1/1 and you get to 6 creatures, it's 24 damage. Trample, 24 trample damage, and that's if you've only played 1/1 tokens this whole time. Yeah, I think you're right. Like I think it gets in. It like creates trample is not to be undercounted. Now going to the charm, I think Cabaretti charm is the worst charm of the group. Cabaretti charm deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control. Target creature or planeswalker. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Creature create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens.
Doesn't even create cats.
For 1 more mana, cats. you get Jetmir.
Why doesn't this create cats?
Well, they're not a cat themed group.
But Jetmir's a cat.
Well, Tora is a dragon. They're not all dragons. Xander's a vampire. They're not all vampires.
How hard would it have been to make them 1/1 green and white?
I think it would be doper. I think they were trying to say it's a party and not someone's like cat collection.
I want cat citizens.
Agreed.
I want cat citizens walking around with like martinis and bow ties.
Not like both flavorfully and mechanically a strict upgrade.
Right? Like if it was imagine if the Cabarettis were like cat gangsters.
Yeah. To be honest, I think like if these were cat tokens versus citizen tokens or cat citizen tokens, this card becomes one of the more playable charms of the 5 versus currently the least playable one, literally with that small change.
And also because you would be playing charming cats, and who doesn't want to play charming cats?
That's true. That's very valid. But yeah, I mean, like, because like the fact that these don't have any tribal consideration,
it's like what?
Yep.
It's kind of a whiff there. Yeah, I gotta say, after talking through all the mechanics and talking through all, I think that the crime family design is very cool.
Well, there's 2.
I'm pretty happy with it.
There's 2 more cards we need to talk about.
Okay,
at least 2. There's like a few more than that, but the I do want to talk about because there's the 5 families, and then there's the Phyrexians. So we have Urabrask, Heretic Praetor, 3 red, 4/4 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. Talking about that as a red ability. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead, they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. So what you just described is what you're doing to your opponent's draw step. You get an extra card a turn. They get 80% of their card draw.
Yeah. It is interesting. It's a good card. It's funny how it compares to the original Urabrask. It's another 5 mana 4/4 with haste, right? It fits the curve in the same way, which is fun. I think this card's good though. I think with the original Urabrask, it gave all your creatures haste, right? That was its only ability.
Original Urabrask was all creatures gain haste and all your opponent's creatures enter to play tapped.
Oh yeah. The second ability on that was pretty relevant. I mean, I think getting an extra card during your upkeep is pretty good. A 5 mana 4/4 that draws you an extra card every turn and then also makes your opponent's turns harder is pretty great.
Yeah, I think like I can see it as a anti-control finisher, like a thing you bring in against control opponents. I think this is a card that is going to see some amount of play in standard. I think it's that level. I think it's good in Commander too because it scales up. I think this is worse than Urabrask and original Urabrask. I think original Urabrask hasn't seen any play in Modern.
I was trying to see if there's any of the Eldrazi, the processors that you put the exile cards into their graveyard that have flash that you could do some kind of shenanigans with.
There's one that I think have activated abilities that do it, right? You could lock out your opponent's draw step with him and a processor, I think.
Maybe. I don't know if there are any that have flash though.
No, there are processors that have activated abilities that you can do as an activated ability.
Oh, like you can pay mana to put the card in there.
Yeah, like 2 mana, tap a creature.
And you would do it during their draw step.
Yeah. So Void Attendant. There is a ton of these. Like Void Attendant is 2 and a green. Put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. Put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature into play. It's a 3 mana.
I just described actually probably what is the strongest thing that this card can do. Yeah. Which is that you probably, if you set up correctly. Now, if your opponent has an instant, if they draw like a path to exile, if they exile a path, they would exile it, you would activate, and they would be able to respond and get rid of your Urbrask. So like any instant speed removal that's exiled is going to screw you, but anything else is pretty good for you.
Yeah.
That seems legitimately powerful.
I think that's a cool, like a red-green control. Like I guess it'd be like Teamer control, and you're playing Urbrask and Void Attendant. Because I think Urbrask is fine in general, right? It's like Void Attendant that's bad. I guess you want to play Naya, I think, because you want to get Pad the Exile and Prismatic Ending, because you want to be able to, like, yes, you're giving that stuff back to their graveyard, but you want those white cards to be able to take advantage of the Void Attendant that you're playing, which is a relatively mediocre card.
Well, also the Void Attendant makes you 1/1s though. I mean, it's a win condition on its own.
It's not bad, but you want ways to exile your opponent's cards. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. Right.
You know what else you could be doing if you're creating useless 1/1s? You could play that other new blue card. That sick new blue card. It copies when you sack a 1/1. Yeah. 2 mana. Look at the top 4.
Now we're playing 4 color.
Dope. Urbrask is definitely worse, but it's still cool though.
Yeah, I think it's a trickier card, and there's definitely cool stuff to do with it. All right. And now the last Planeswalker, which we haven't talked about, which I think is maybe the best one in Modern, with Ob Nixilis maybe having a chance. Like, it's a 3-mana walker in like relevant colors that gains value. But Vivian on the Hunt, 4 green, 6-mana Planeswalker. Legendary Planeswalker Vivian. For a +2, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. +1, mill 5 cards. Then put any number of creature cards milled this way into your hand. -1, create a 4/4 Rhino Warrior creature token. So there's no ultimate. You just automatically get a -1. You have a massive pump. So you're thinking, all right, Alex Kessler, we get it. You love a birthing pod. This is a 6-mana Planeswalker. The amount of 6-mana Planeswalkers that didn't cost colorless and weren't cast off of Eldrazi lands that have seen play in Modern, I think, is 2. What are you talking about? This is the highest chance of seeing play in Modern. Well, let me tell you a few things. If you cast Vivian and you have a 3-drop creature in play and your opponent does not have removal, you win.
How does that happen?
So Vivian sacrifices that 3-drop creature. Vivian then finds Felidar Guardian. Felidar Guardian comes into play. It blinks Vivian. Vivian then sacrifices the Felidar Guardian. You then find Karmic Guide. That Karmic Guide reanimates Felidar Guardian. Felidar Guardian comes back into play. Blinks Vivian again. You then re-sacrifice that Felidar Guardian. Hopefully, Rick is putting this on screen. You re-sacrifice that Felidar Guardian. You find yourself a Kiki-Jiki. You then copy that Karmic Guide. You then use that Karmic Guide to get that Felidar Guardian back into play, blinking that Kiki-Jiki, going infinite. Fun fact about Modern Horizons 1. In it is a card that you may remember, Ben, named Planebound Accomplice.
Planebound Accomplice.
This is a 2 and a red human wizard. For 1 red, you may put a Planeswalker card from your hand onto the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. It is a 1/3. It is also conveniently a 3-mana creature. So if you have Planebound Accomplice in your hand and Vivian of the Hunt in your hand and 4 mana, 2 of which are red, you win.
I mean, it's you definitely have to survive all of the interaction that goes along with playing a creature that needs a turn because it doesn't have haste, right?
No, it has haste.
Planebound has haste.
It is a 1 red activated ability. There's no tapping. You can using Arbor Elf and the enchantment that goes on a land with Arbor Elf that can untap to make 2 mana. You can win with this combo on turn 2.
Wow.
And all of these cards, other than the 4 Vivian and the 4 Planebound Accomplice that you're playing with, are just good cards. And you only need 1 of them. And additionally, Planebound Accomplice can put Teferi into play at instant speed, and can put Saheeli Ray into play at instant speed along with your Felidar Guardian.
Yeah, and Saheeli and that whole thing.
So, is this a deck? I don't know. Is there a 2-card combo? It's in my hand, and if I untap with 4 mana, I win unless my opponent interacts with it. Yes.
The 4 mana Rector that sacks to search for a Planeswalker is not Modern legal. That comes from
that's from Battle Bond. Yeah,
that's right. Okay. I was gonna say that would just be too much. You could just search for a Kiki with it.
Yes. Yeah. That it would also be very good here. Now there is Thalia's Lancers, which lets you tutor for a Planeswalker for 5 mana. Yep. So like there are other cool cards you can play to help with that game plan. And like, mind you, say they have removal spells for parts of the program. Plainbound Accomplice coming in for 1 red. If they kill it, you still have Vivian in your hand, right? Like, they spent removal. You're playing a game where there's interaction, so you're theoretically getting to a later turn where you're able to just cast Vivian. It's not like you just can't, like, in Modern, 6-drops can be cast, but they are not good if you don't have ways to do other things with them. But if you can get to them, it's fine. And obviously, this is a deck that wants to, play Ignoble Hierarch and Noble Hierarch. So you can have as many little creatures as possible to ramp anyways. To get your Plainbound Accomplice on turn 2. So on turn 3, you can go off. But the other part of that is, like, say they interact with the creatures, you still have a 6 mana, 6 loyalty Planeswalker in play. If you get Vivian in and then they interact, figuring out what you're doing, right? Like, it's not like making 4/4 rhinos every single turn isn't going to be good, or drawing cards into other pieces. So, like, she has relevant abilities beyond just Birthing Pod. I don't know. That's a lot of insane abilities.
Really good. No, there's a lot of really cool stuff here for sure. I think I did not know that this was building towards what you just described.
Oh, and, I was burying the lead for dramatic effect for this podcast, knowing that you don't watch Twitter as much as you won't follow me on Twitter, where I've been talking about this all day.
I do follow you on Twitter.
No, wow. I know you follow me, but, like, you didn't. I somehow snuck this under the radar.
What if just now, when you said that, I was like, "You're right, I don't follow you," and then you looked, and I didn't follow you on Twitter.
That would be a moment. That would be really sad.
That'd be a moment on the podcast.
Right now. We would have top 10 anime betrayals. So that's the other the Planeswalker I'm probably most excited from the set, and so far maybe the card I'm most maybe like Xander from a commander perspective, but from a Modern perspective, that's the deck I'm like most motivated to build out the gate. The other card I do want to talk about today, there's 2 other cards. So the next one is Halo Fountain, and this is 2 and a white artifact. White, tap, untap, tapped creature you control, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. For white, you can tap it to untap 2 tapped creatures you control to draw a card. And for 5 white, tap it, untap 15 tapped creatures you control. You win the game.
Yeah, this card's pretty good. There's a lot going on here. I don't immediately, right off the bat, when I read it, know like how to win the game with it. I'm sure there have been people who have talked online today about it and probably come up with it, but there's a lot of optionality here, and it is possible to win the game. I mean, this definitely does something pretty good.
So
I saw you say on Twitter today that you didn't understand why people were pearl clutching so much because of this card.
No. It's not this card. So that was more, there's like a very weird, so Halo is like a drug / alcohol / magic elixir in the story. And there's been a lot of how dare does Wizards put drugs in my Magic the Gathering? That's what I was talking about.
See.
Nothing to do with, which Star Wars has spice. There's I don't know. I was a little off.
Dune has spice.
I don't know if you can. No, so does Star Wars.
Star Wars has spice?
Yeah, Han Solo dumped an entire spice. That's why Jabba the Hutt's after him. I mean, Star Wars knocked a lot off of Dune, right? It's not up to and including giant sand planet. Glitter Sim spice. It's from Kessel. That's what they mine on Kessel is spice. The Kessel run.
The Kessel run.
Did.
There you go. Parsecs.
He dumped a load of spice, and that's why Jabba the Hutt's after him. Some Star Wars facts for everyone listening to this podcast. But so that's my thing with Halo, is I think it's cool. I don't know if you could do this era without a level of some type of substance for there to be smuggling akin to alcohol during Prohibition, right? That's such a key feature. Right. And the thing with Halo Fountain is, and this is something that I don't know if our listeners know, is when you have costs for a card, you do not have to do them all in the same order. So you can, if you make Halo Fountain into a creature, you can use Halo Fountain's ability to tap it and then untap it. It can be the creature you untap. So if you have this plus 1 creature that produces 1 white mana, for instance, you can use those together to make a ton of creatures, all of the 1/1 creature tokens. You can use those if it makes 2 white mana to make. Sorry, you can't do that for the first ability because you have to untap it. For the second ability, you can draw through your whole deck. If you have a creature, if you have an ability to make this into an artifact, say with Ensoul Artifact, and you have a creature that taps for 2 white mana, you can draw your whole deck.
Right, because you just untap. If you turn this into a creature, because that creature
and it untaps and they untap, you draw your whole deck. If you have some way to make 3 mana, you make infinite mana, draw your whole deck, and then you can use that mana to make infinite 1/1s or and then make those infinite 1/1s and turn them into 15/15s, right? So there's like it has cool breakable ways to deal with it. It's a 3-mana artifact, and stuff like Soul Artifact has seen play. There's the new D&D one that's like the 1 blue, and then you can tap it for 2.
Wow, I just saw an offer you can't refuse.
What's the offer I can't refuse? Oh yeah, that was the last card I wanted to talk about. So the last card we're going to talk about today is an offer you can't refuse,
which is sweet, by the way. That like there's some really fun tongue-in-cheek stuff that Magic has leaned into these last few years. This is what I was saying on our pre-show. It's so nice to see that there's exploration of tropes and themes that aren't just like Dungeons and Dragons. And now we have had D&D, but like specifically D&D inspired mythology of Lord of the Rings style wizards and goblins and elves and orcs and all that sort of stuff that we've gotten into a whole new world. And this is a specific line from The Godfather. I mean, like, and there is so much stuff that is, you know, a throw to crime families that it's just cool that there's a card called an offer you can't refuse. It's fun. It's an instant for 1 blue, counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. This is akin to Swan Song, is what it reminds me of. However, Swan Song is instant sorcery or enchantment, and they get a 2/2 flyer. This is non-creature for 1, and they get 2 treasures. Now, there are some formats where playing this for 1 and giving it will be terrible for you. And early in the game, where like you have your 1 blue counter spell and you have 1 blue open and you've decided to like thwart what they're doing, it's probably bad for you because you're accelerating them 2 mana in that situation. But having this in a deck where you are playing control and you have lots of optionality and just knowing that you have a negate for 1 blue is pretty darn strong.
Like Path to Exile has seen play in Modern since the beginning. This kind of does what Path to Exile does. It's different. Right, it's for 1 turn worse than Path to Exile, but for the rest of the game, better. At it, sometimes at parity, it's for 2 turns, it's as good as Path to Exile, right? So like, it's kind of like, to me, it almost feels like reverse Spell Pierce too, right? Because it's like instead of them having to pay 2 mana to save their spell, they just get 2 mana for later. I don't know. I really like this card. I think it's like from a person. What's the 2 mana counter Arcane Denial? Like I've cast a lot of Arcane Denial, and like that card feels bonkers because like
that card can also counter target spell though. Anything.
Sure, but it's 2 mana. I'm not saying this is actually. I
mean, my eyes widened when I saw this card. There's a reason that I suggested we talk about.
I think this is a card that is one of the best cards ever printed from a like best 1,000 cards ever printed, right? Like I don't know if it's a top 100. I don't know if it's better than Spell Pierce, but I think it's in contention for better than Spell Pierce.
Yeah, it's a hard counter is the point.
Yeah,
that's anytime you look at like you're trying to figure out the rate on one of these things, and you have to balance out the cost. It being a non-conditional hard counter is the part of it that is the most important to pay attention to. Like this is just as good late as it is good early. In fact, in some ways, this card's better late. I mean, obviously early you have limited mana, so it's probably better that you in a competitive format have access to a hard counter for 1 early in the game. But in other ways, it's better late because who cares about them getting 2 treasures late in the game?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this when you compare this to lots of others, it's one of the least conditional, right? Negate has seen sideboard play in Modern forever for a reason. This is a good ability. Non-creature is a strong ability.
I think by a wide margin, it is the most locked guaranteed card of any card we talked about to see play in Modern.
Yeah, I would agree. This will be a staple because how could it not be?
Yeah, it's better than other cards that are currently seeing play.
Yeah, agreed.
And does things in a way that's kind of insane. And 2 treasures is good for your opponent, but it is not backbreaking. Like, and especially in Modern in a format where like there are some matchups where this card's terrible and you should side it out, right? Like don't play this against Tron, don't play this against any Amulet decks. Anyone who's playing Primeval Titan, bad. But any deck that's playing like 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drops, they get their 3 drop turn early
against Tron. Wouldn't you want to be able to counter Karn? Just give them 2 treasures for a blue.
Yeah, but then they get to cast Ugin the next turn. I guess like Tron, it's
counter
mediocre. Ugin? Yeah, okay. Tron's not that bad. It's good against Tron. It's bad against Amulet Titan though.
Yeah, it's all lands and Primeval Titans. Creatures, yeah, I mean, this is just another example of Magic knowing what it's doing, which is so fun. Which is like I cast this, and I'm like, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Like it's just so it's so fun that they keep doing stuff
playing
like
in the tropes. I mean, we got like we got the briefcase that's like handcuffed to your arm with the gems inside. We got a mysterious limousine. We got a getaway car. I mean, that card's also dope. 3 mana for a haste vehicle, 4/3 crew 1. When you crew it with something, return the crew card to your hand. Like that's like people are talking about returning Dockside Extortionist and Stoneforge Mystic to your hand. You know, like there's all the cool stuff you can do. So this set is so dope. I'm like really excited. And like already want to build multiple commander decks. I've already brewed 3 modern decks in my phone. In fact, I'll post the list on our Patreon for free for anyone. You don't have to donate to Patreon. I'll just post the list I've been working on to take advantage of Vivian of the Hunt right now, so that it's available when you get here. It's not complete. I probably won't even have the mana base completed, but yeah, I'm really hyped by this set.
Agreed. I think it's awesome. So thank you guys so much for listening and watching another episode of the show. Be sure to hit that thumbs up on the YouTube video and leave a comment below if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio, we appreciate you. A big shout out to somebody who sent me a message just a second ago that I wanted to shout out tonight because I was touched by this. Movies The Gathering sent me a message, says big fan of the podcast and these new series that you're putting out. That is a fan of Masters of Modern and is awesome. I appreciate the message. And he was talking about these movie things I've been posting, which is cool to have somebody who loves our Magic content, who also appreciates the movie stuff I do, which I appreciate. And yeah.
We have an affiliate code with Alter Sleeves. If you just want to buy Alter Sleeves cards, they're really cool. They let you see the cards. They go over cards like inner sleeves that change the look of your cards. They let you get really, really cool effects from them. And then if you donate to our Patreon at a level that has not been announced yet, we will be doing a Lightning Bolt promo next month. So that'll be official sometime in the next 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that announcement. But if you go to altersleeves.com right now, we have an area that is ours that like has some of our favorite artwork designated. And then also any cards you buy from there, if you use the code the MMcast, we get a little bit of a benefit. I believe you get a little bit of a discount. Let us know if that's not true. For sure, but I think that is true. But for sure, it helps the podcast out a lot. This might be the last podcast I'm on. Me personally, Ben's going to be taking over for a little while. Maybe I'll be on next week. But I will. My wife is pregnant, and I might have a child. But I will be a dad possibly the next time
in the next couple days. I'm gonna make sure I come over and get a Magic card in your child's hand. So
perfect.
I'll be there.
It's going to be a challenge to prevent that from happening a lot on purpose. All right. Thank you so much, listeners. Thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you, patrons, for donating to the podcast. Please comment and like below the answers to trivia and all the other things we talked about. And we are excited to talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.